Brown versus Board of Education is an important decision for anybody that cares about equal opportunity. Above the Supreme Court, there's an inscription that says equal justice under law, and I think a strong case could be made that that building never understood what that meant until Brown versus Board of Education. I think that the Brown versus Board of Education decision happened to a large extent because of the quality advocacy of Thurgood Marshall as a lawyer. In 1984, 30 years after the Brown decision, then Justice Marshall noted that an ounce of history is worth a volume of logic. And he said that in the context of a case where he was commenting on a history of exclusion and paternalism and neglect, particularly directed at people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. But unfortunately, Justice Marshall's wisdom is not the law of the land. Congress passed a law in 1975, which is now called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. We would not have had an IDEA if it were not for Brown. Today, over 6 million children are receiving education and receiving special education services, and from my perspective, we've made incredible strides for all children, including children with disabilities, since 1954. But until the dropout rates for children in special ed are comparable to the dropout rates for the general public, we know that we still have work to do. I think a good barometer for when we have achieved equal opportunity for children and adults with disabilities is the Americans with Disabilities Act. If the education system is working, people with disabilities will be employed, they'll own their own homes, they'll raise families, they'll have equal access to the American dream. And unfortunately today that's the exception rather than the rule. There's a crisis in public education for children with disabilities and so many other disenfranchised groups. And until we address that crisis by putting more money into quality public education in urban settings, in rural settings, in isolated areas where children are most vulnerable to be left out, we're not realizing the dream of Brown.